Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Thomas Power. Hello, Thomas. How are you?
Hello, Mindy. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Hey, thoughtful leaders, they come in many shapes and sizes and different forms, and you stand out in incredible way. All the people who know you would call you one. You're not allowed to call yourself one, but you're on the show because we call you one.
Very kind.
So let's share a bit of your journey with our viewers and listeners. So what are you doing in the world?
What am I doing in the world? Well, right now I'm building up the Bit 100 community with Penny, and I'm an independent director on a number of different boards around the world, supporting those entrepreneurs with their own journey. So either building community or supporting board members, I would say, is primarily what I do.
Yeah. And so can you elaborate a little bit on the kinds of things that you're interested in and what you're passionate about?
I'm very interested in technology and how it's affecting behavior. Obviously, you know already I'm a complete addict to Clubhouse because it reminds me so much of Ecademy. I call it the House of Clubs. I'm very interested in listening as a service, what I call LAS. I think listening is more powerful than broadcast. And I see we're finishing the end of broadcast media and now we're starting the listening media. So I'm very interested in that. I'm very interested in people's profiles and how they project themselves across all these different platforms, because, you know, we all have to be on all of them, all of the time, every day, seemingly. So I'm very interested in that. I'm very interested in publicly listed boards that I sit on, because they're now faced with this challenge of do they, don't they, do the crypto thing, the Bitcoin thing, the Ethereum thing, the Polkadot thing. So boards are really challenged by that because they don't have those skills. And they've never experienced that. I'm very fascinated by NFTs, non-fungible tokens, because they're exploding. And obviously, you know, I've written a book about blockchain, so I'm very fascinated about that. I'm just realizing, Mindy, I'm very fascinated by a lot of different things. I don't really have a thing. The kids always say, Dad, you've got to have a thing. But I don't really have a thing. I'm interested in lots of things.
Yes, and of course, I've been listening as a service to our listeners. And what I've decided is that your thing actually combines just two things, people and technology. And very few people get that combination right. And when I say right, I don't mean there's a right or wrong, but right for them. So people and technology, if, you know, correct me if I'm not saying this the way you would, Thomas, but people are either quite far along on the people spectrum and, you know, afraid of tech or not using it properly or effectively, or they're tech and they get the people skills not quite right. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you're dead right with that, Mindy. I would say because I've been online for 30 years, I'm much more of a people person than a tech person, but I've had to learn all this tech, as we all have, and we all know it's been very painful learning the tech. But I think it's easier to learn the tech than it is for tech people to learn people.
You think?
Yeah, much, much harder to learn people than it is to learn tech. Tech is mechanical. Tech is a machine. At the end of the day, it's like learning to drive a car or learning to fly a plane. It's very complicated at the beginning, and then it becomes easy. with people. It's always complicated at the beginning, and it's always complicated after 30 years. People don't get any simpler. People are getting much more complex and much harder to understand. So, yeah, I do like your two labels, people and technology, quite a lot. I like those a lot.
Well, I mean, it's simple, no fancy jargon, but, that's how I see you. And I haven't known you 30 years, but I have known you about 20 years. So
yeah, I would say you probably have.
I have actually. But let's get back to the topic of thoughtful leadership. Now, the thing about thoughtful leadership, if people don't listen carefully, they think that we've said thought leadership. And as you know, I wrote 24 Karat Bold because I was very keen to show people how to be thought leaders. But that was 10 years ago. And the reason why thoughtful leadership has come to the fore is that a lot of people are just focused on being an expert, a thought leader, and doing it in any way they can, sometimes without involving any thought or the right kind of thought. And my passion is also for people, but specifically that good people working really hard should get great results. That's, if there was something for my tombstone, if I were to have one, good people who work really hard should get great results. And that's why I'm here on the planet. So what are your thoughts about thought leadership compared to thoughtful leadership?
Wow. There might be an overlap with the technology and the people thing you mentioned earlier. I think the thoughtful people know more about the context of applying their skill, their niche, their expertise to people more so than to technology. I think the thought leader tends to know about the application of their idea, skill, expertise, or technique in relation to the technology and misjudges the people part. So to me, the thoughtful is your expertise for the people. I think a lot of harm has been done by the social media platforms, much greater harm than they realize, because the leaders of those platforms are thought leaders, but they're not thoughtful leaders. And they're perhaps lacking primarily the empathy skills to see the effect on people, on their mental health, whether that be through their self-esteem or through a loss of confidence or dark thoughts. But I think the trouble with software engineers is they focus on the task at hand, not the people at hand. And the people have to fit into their machine. And that makes it very, very hard for a lot of people who are non-techs. And the techs represent only 1% of the planet. They don't represent a large part of the planet, the techs. So to me, the thoughtful leader is leading people with your thought, with the technology behind. The thought leader is leading with the thought, with the technology at the front. It's
wow,
just the way I feel it.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why you're on the show, because you're a thought leader and a thoughtful leader. So as I say, I'm allowed to say that. And there are times when we do things that don't feel very thoughtful. When we look at our actions, our behavior, our language, if we're stressed, we might, I'll speak for myself, say something and then think, that was not very thoughtful. In fact, maybe it was thoughtless. So this can happen at any time. It's not that somebody's 100% of the time thoughtful or thoughtless. But what you've said is very thoughtful. And I think the intention behind it is key. So you mentioned the word empathy, but then I totally got stuck on this. Only 1% of the population of the world are techies or software or whatever you called them. Geeks. I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to people skills, but yeah, it's techie geeks.
But when I say geeks, I mean people who write code.
Yeah, okay, let's be fair.
And you've got about 80 million of those worldwide.
Okay, this is fascinating because...
So they're building systems for the other 99,
yeah,
but they lack empathy.
Yeah, well, in some cases, let's not generalize too much. There must be some software engineers and coders who are thoughtful and, they're welcome to apply to come on the show. What I would say is that they're disproportionately influential, which brings up another whole question for me. And that is, The question of influence, many people who focus on thought leadership are thinking, how can they influence? And as you know, I speak about how you influence, but also being very aware and choosing your influences and influencers. So choosing what you allow in and how you allow yourself to be influenced and by whom. So what are your thoughts on this, and who are you allowing yourself to be influenced by these days?
Well, like you, Mindy, I'm very choosy. And so because of the point you made about some software developers must have empathy, I just want to come back to that, because I think that some is a very small percentage, very small. But I do think that we have seen our first empathy platform like Ecademy, which is Clubhouse. That to me is the first one which is empathy driven, not broadcast driven, not advertising driven. So I want to come back to that later, because I know you want to ask about that later. But in terms of influence, I'm very choosy about people I'm influenced by. It's about 500 people worldwide. I have a list and I monitor what they say every day. Not at the weekend. I don't touch my phone or computer on a Saturday or a Sunday. I leave iPad, phone, computer in the office. I don't use the machines at the weekend, because I know my body has to heal, because we all work these intense weeks, at least Monday to Friday. And so I'm influenced by about 500 people worldwide. And the one I consider the most advanced thinker is an American Indian guy called Naval Ravikant. And I think he's probably the most advanced and thoughtful leader on the planet.
You must bring him on the show.
His Twitter handle is @Naval, Naval, but it's Naval. It's an Indian. It's like Royal Navy, but it's Naval because it's a long V because of the Indian. Sorry, it's a long A at the end. I'm very careful who I'm influenced by, because I study and research people in so much detail, and because I see people across all of the platforms. But my favorite platform for studying people remains TweetDeck.
Okay.
Ever since Ian Dodsworth wrote that in London with his mum's money and he sold it to Twitter, that remains my platform of choice. I sit on Twitter, I have a giant screen, I have all the columns, I have all the topics, and I could literally sit, and if I didn't have any other work to do, I could sit and watch that for 24 hours a day.
I have no idea what to say to that, except well done if you can keep track of that much. I was looking at TweetDeck, but then it just became one of many.
I can literally consume 1,000 tweets an hour with ease. I can read them, share them, connect them to people, introduce them, literally, because I think it works with my word. My mind is driven by keyword tags, as you know, the 50 keywords at Ecademy, the 50 keywords on the profile, the 50 keywords on the business card. My mind works in keyword tags. So I associate tags. I see the tweets. That belongs to Mindy. That belongs to Penny. That belongs to John. That belongs to Bob. That belongs to Susan. And I can just twist them. And I would like to automate that, but it's not possible for me to have the time to do that yet.
So that is your talent or skill set, and it's obviously quite joyful for you to do that. You are great at making connections, and the brain synapses in your mind might be different from someone else's. Do you think it's a skill that others could learn?
Well, Penny thinks it's probably some form of autistic disability.
Disability, different ability.
Different ability, but it's. I think you have to have the desire to associate people by keyword. The thing I learned from Ecademy, remember I sat at the IOD meeting Ecademy members from 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, 1,000 people a year, one-to-ones, is I noticed that they use about 50 keywords an hour. And when humans speak, they use about 50 keywords an hour. And if you can remind people of the keywords they use, they then know you're listening and appreciate you more. And then they give you more keywords. And the more you can remind people what they're saying to you, the important words they're saying to you, remember there's a lot of drivel in natural conversation, the more they say keywords to you and you say, Mindy, you've just said this, the more they know you're listening, the more they give you a better word. And throughout the hour of a meeting, because I could only have an hour one-to-one because there were so many to see, I met In 2002, 3, 4, and 5, I met 1,000 people a year, one-to-one. It's a lot of meetings. So I had to have a system because I had to be able to remember that belongs to Mindy, that belongs to Penny. And that's where the 50-word keyword tags came. I would say it's unlikely you could learn it. It's probably something you were born with. Like someone are good at catching balls. Some people are good at hitting balls. Some people are very good at swimming in the sea. Other people can't catch a ball and can't swim. I think some of these things you can't be trained. I've just got a very strong association. When I'm sitting in a board meeting, I can sit there for 4 or 5 hours. There will be only 1 or 2 important things said every hour. But those are the ones I will hear. And then I'll focus on those 1 or 2 words or phrases or sentences in that hour. And so my mind I'm so obsessed with listening that I'm critically looking for the keywords that everyone says all the time. So when you say thought and thoughtful, I'm then associating the full with the flu in influence.
Oh my gosh.
So FUL, if you see, is hidden inside influence. So inside thoughtful, I see influence. And then I think, so Mindy's probably going to say a word to do with influence next because the FUL is associated with it. So influence and thoughtful, influence, they're associated. So those are kind of things that go on in my head. And then I tag them and see if they're relevant. And if I wasn't doing an interview like this, I would just forget about it. But because you've asked, I would say, like you say, it's a difference ability, but I have some keyword lookup table thing. I can still see the Ecademy profiles in my mind. I can still read them now. I can look at somebody's profile in the past. Bear in mind, this is now 20 years ago. I can call up the profile, I can read the name, and I can look up the phone number, and then I can phone them. Yeah. I can do weird stuff like that.
I just think it's great. We've heard the metaphor that the brain is like a computer, but this has really established that fact, and everybody's brain is capable of doing many things. I'd just like to ask,
if you think about that, the brain and the computer, the AI thing, is all the AI tags are keyword tags.
Yeah.
That's all they are. I know people think it's a revolution, but a child copies a parent based on sounds and words and movements. And they're listening all the time. Listening. Hear a word tag, move a hand. Is all AI is a keyword tag emulator. So it's not really a revolution, I don't think. It's just able to do it much faster than a human.
In that case, I think AI should stand for authentic intelligence and not artificial intelligence.
Yes, well, I think in many ways, whether you use authentic or augmented, it's not artificial because that's exactly how humans behave anyway. And so I think it's a kind of a disservice to the software to use the word artificial.
Yeah.
Because when these smartphones are embedded in our heads with Neuralink, and remember, that's mass market 2027. It's not very far away. We'll be chipped. We won't buy a new smartphone. We'll buy a new chip. It'll be connected to our neocortex, and we'll be on the internet. We'll be devices.
Yeah, Terminator leaps to mind.
I know everyone thinks Terminator, but we are the AI on the internet. It's us. It's not a super duper fast car and a super duper fast computer and a super duper fast phone. It isn't that. It's us. We're the AI. We're going to be connected to the network. What the French philosopher Pierre de Teilhard called the noosphere, the birth of the global mind, which he wrote about in 1922. And now we're creating the global mind. This is it. This is the noosphere. We're building it.
Yeah. Well, we already have IoT. We have devices that are pretty much attached to our body. Not that I use them, I don't think, but there's, I can see this happening. But may I please divert you away from this just temporarily, because I have another couple of questions that I think my listeners would like to have the answers to.
Okay.
The first one is, what is a common misconception that people have about you? So this is something that keeps coming up and is not true.
A common misconception about me.
What do people say about you all the time and you think, huh?
I don't know. I don't hear what people say about me.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That I'm short or tall? I don't know.
That's interesting. So you're not really focused on what people are saying about you. Is that true?
I wouldn't say I give it a lot of time. I do like it when people try and analyze me on Twitter or any platform, but you'd have to tell me. I don't know what.
Well, I don't know what's true and what's not true. I ask that question of a lot of my guests, not all. Many times the conversation goes in a different direction, but I do like asking that because it has that effect. And some people who obsess with self-awareness and are always navel gazing, they will have something that trips off the tongue. But just the fact that you don't know, and the fact that you followed up by saying you don't spend a lot of time thinking about, worrying about what other people think, there's a lesson in that, because you're extremely productive, you get a lot done. Is it because you don't waste a lot of time thinking about others' perceptions of you?
I mean, I've never really even thought about it. I don't even think about what people think. It's not that I don't care. I would care if they said something. And sometimes people say some horrible things to me on Twitter or one of those platforms. But if they do, I think because we experienced such severe trolling in 2004 to 2006 at Ecademy, before the big networks blew up, we were like the first to be trolled, if you like. And it was so bad, I started to realize that those who were doing it, they had something wrong.
Yeah.
But it took me many years to get used to that, because the effect of their harm, I can still feel that harm 15 years later. But now I think I keep such a low profile, I'm not worth targeting anymore. I have a very low profile online and offline. I would say I'm close to invisible now.
I guess. I mean, if you say so, but I think you're quite well known. You've got, chat shows and talk shows and lots of activity on social media. And you have, quite a big network, quite a lot of connections, even if they're kind of just peripheral. I don't know if I would agree with that. Maybe that's the misconception. You think you're invisible and you're not.
Well, it could be that. But I mean, I could go back to the heady days of Ecademy very easily and become a superstar again. But when you are an international superstar on the internet, the price you pay is very high, as I'm seeing with my good friend Jay Shetty, who is now in many ways my protege, somebody I have trained and coached and mentored for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
But he pays a high price for that status. And I said to him, when you get up there and you're on top of that Everest mountain, the price will be high. So be prepared for what's on top of that mountain. And I prepared him for that, to cope with that. But I've been to the top of that mountain. I don't want to go to the top of it again. I'm quite happy to know I've climbed it and to know I worked my way back down it. But I'm kind of happy at base camp, which is still quite high, but I never want to go to the top of the mountain again.
I love that. That's great. I'm happy at base camp, which is still quite high. Yeah, I'll be thinking about that as we go forward. So we probably just have time for one more question. And so this is really what all the listeners want to know. Where is more thoughtful leadership required? Where is more thoughtful behavior required in our society? So you can talk, think as big as you like. Where have you seen that it's lacking?
Well, obviously it's severely lacking in politics. In international politics, in Europe and the UK and in North America, worldwide, there's very little, I think, what I'd consider thoughtful leadership, to use your beautiful word. There's a lot of thought leadership. There's a lot of ideas to consider. But a thoughtful leader puts the idea in the context of the humans. And I think we're lacking that in politics, in business, throughout government. Not so sure about education because I don't work so much in schools and universities like I used to. I don't know there, but I would hope it's better there, because I would hope that's a high empathy environment.
It is. I mean, I do a lot of speaking in schools myself.
Okay, so...
at the grassroots level, the teacher level, that's why they're in the profession for the most part.
I do think empathy and listening skills have to be taught. They have to be trained. Empathy and listening skills tend to be a lot more female than male. I don't know whether that's programming, or the way you're reared as a child, whether you have more male influence or more female influence.
Okay.
But I had 3 sisters, a mother, a powerful mother, so much more sensitive to listening and empathy than perhaps typical males who are less empathetic. I would say the biggest issue facing the world, Mindy, is the information about what's really going on is not reaching the ordinary people. And I'm kind of disappointed with the power inside these platforms not contextualizing the data for the ordinary man or woman. Whether it's Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey or Twitter, any one of these platforms, I just wish they would contextualize the data for the ordinary man so it's not wrapped up in fakery and drama and sensationalism. It's just, here's the information. And you have to now dig around for it yourself. And unless you're a skilled user like you or I, you don't have the filters to find the right pieces of information. So you then get caught in this web of sensationalism and fakery. And I'm disappointed that the big social platforms are not more contribute to the human race driven rather than advertising driven. I know they've got to have advertising to pay the bills, but I think they could be much more contribution based than let's skin them and get our share price up base. I just don't like that side of technology, that it's kind of skinning people. I want it to be contribution driven, earth improvement driven, human race driven, not see if we can get them driven. That's really why I'm very pleased about Clubhouse, because it's a listening-based revolution. And believe me, it is a revolution. And I can see there's a big bet there between Mark Andreessen, who's a board member at Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg. You remember that movie Trading Places?
Yeah.
With Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd? Do you remember the bet?
Yeah.
That's the bet between Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen.
I really hope that Clubhouse doesn't go down that road, because if you think of where all the other platforms started, they did start by being a place where people could share. And I'll never forget that you, Thomas Power, about 15 years ago said, people will charge on social media, people will have to pay. And I think we were just, we didn't believe you because everything was free back then. But then it became more commercialized. And now, if you really want your content to be seen, you do have to pay.
You do.
You were right. You're a bit of a futurist, but we could just talk for hours. But unfortunately, this has to draw to a close at some point. Are there any final words that you have for the listeners? And how can they find you? What's your preferred, maybe Twitter?
They can connect with me on Twitter or WhatsApp. Everything is public. All my numbers are public, so they can find my WhatsApp number everywhere on every platform, completely public. The only thing I would say to people is work very, very hard on your profile and try and make your profile consistent across all the platforms, and really work hard to behave well, to be contribution to the human race based, because I only really care about what people will say about me when I'm dead. That's really the only thing I care about. What will they say when I'm dead? I don't care really about the other kind of things. And as long as you are making a contribution to the other humans, I think that's the most important thing. And that should be in your listeners' profiles, whichever is their favorite platform. Then just keep contributing to others so that people talk about your reputation when you're gone, because the only thing you have when you're gone is your reputation.
What a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Thomas Power, a true thoughtful leader. And this has been a delight speaking with you today. And I'm sure you will get connection requests. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you for inviting me on the show, Mindy.
Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader. And I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindyGK.com. Speak to you again soon.